things. Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, episode 160 of Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast.
160
in it. A weekly podcast where we figure out what we think, and I'm not going to try and do that thing where we say who we are, because I was finding it quite not great. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Majic.
And this week we are going to celebrate 1 year of
Lockdown,
not being able to do anything.
It's also, do you know what day it is today? It's my wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
And it's also my husband's birthday.
What?
So for his birthday 10 years ago, I gave him a wife.
What a generous gift.
I gave him the promise to try really, really, really hard to make our relationship last forever. In public, in front of friends.
There's a misogynistic joke in that, and I'm glad that my brain isn't going anywhere like that. Sorry.
Like,
oh, your wife, your boring show. Something like that.
Take my wife. No, go on, take her.
Take her. Get her off your hands. As soon as we started recording, the sun went in, and now the lighting is all wrong. It's a disaster. I should really maintain better control over this lighting by using internal lighting. So lockdown, probably, do you remember toilet paper?
Yeah.
And when everyone
There's been all sorts of episodes.
Remember when everyone thought that was the way to respond to it, a pandemic? Buy toilet paper. All that. We'll talk about that probably. And I don't know. I don't know. Yeast.
Yeah, there was an international yeast shortage.
I wasn't aware of that. I knew there was a flour shortage in all the supermarkets. I didn't know there was a yeast shortage.
Yeah. Even if you could get hold of flour, if you were a bread baker, you were still fucked.
You can do it. If you didn't have your sourdough. I think I sort of talked over the swear enough. It's okay that we're permanently flagged as an explicit podcast on Apple Podcasts now, whether or not I set it to not being explicit. Just because we did one episode where we kept saying the C word. You ask me, it's a scandal. Let's start into this episode, shall we? Let's get on with it. Let's do it. You can still hear me. How's it going, Ivanka? How's life? Oh, episode 160 is still all over the screen, even though my button didn't work. Oh, I press F3, that's what I press. How's it going?
Oh, glad we sorted that out.
Yeah, well, you should be.
Going. I am. I'm not even being rude. No, how is it going? It is going. It's my anniversary today. I may have already mentioned it.
Happy anniversary.
My wedding anniversary.
How many?
10 years we've been married. 10
That's a proper
years.
One. What is the reward? What's the prize for that?
I don't know. Eternal happiness and joy.
Oh, what? What about material?
No. Do you know what the reward was for my husband? Because it's also his birthday. I unloaded the dishwasher by myself this morning. So
that is an underrated gift. It's wonderful.
Think so.
I'll tell you what, though, more than that now in my house, it's if I don't have to make the bed with the goddamn weighted blanket and the thing in front of it, so you can't do it from the end. You have to keep walking around. I have to walk around like 4 to 6 times to get that freaking bed made, and it's really heavy, this weighted blanket, so you're sort of like so those occasional mornings when I come in and it's made, I'm like but it is similar to the dishwasher.
Yeah, dishwasher. I don't. Normally we do have a bit of a system where we do it together, or we involve the child. There's bits she can. We make her earn her keep as well. So yes, anniversary. It's his birthday on the same day, so it's kind of a big day for us. And I had a run-in with a dental nurse, a Croatian dental nurse this week. This morning, in fact. She was just being rude and officious and power hungry. So I didn't deal with it very well. I just ran away and called my mum and cried. It's been horrible to me. And then what else has happened this week? I've installed a new browser. I may have mentioned it to you, Michael, called Brave.
I mean, I've had spoilers for all these, so...
Yeah, but the Brave thing I didn't realise was I installed it on the back of reading something that said it was more efficient and used less battery and less energy
Right.
But then I'm also getting a bit into the privacy thing. So I installed that. It's been a week, hasn't it? Work's work, life's life.
It's just a blur of identical experiences, one after the other.
It is. We had I'm sure, yes, the other day over dinner, I told my child, who is 6, I said, look, I said, you just need to evaluate this dinner objectively. Because she was pushing it. I don't like this. No one try. Well, have you tried it? No. Well, look, unless you've evaluated it objectively, you don't have to eat it. You do have to try it. And when Nick goes, evaluated objectively.
Look, you've got to teach them the long words when their brain is absorbent. Nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. She knows what things like. The other day he said something about opportunity, and then he said, what does it mean? And she went, a chance. We're like, okay, yeah, that's good.
Then did she say, speak plain English and
she didn't.
plain Croatian? No. Is there such a thing as plain Croatian?
No. I think is a whole topic of study.
Right.
Weirdly. Now you've reminded me, because I did this project. But now that I'm here, and my Croatian I am very literate, but I'm not I wasn't university educated in Croatian, and therefore my vocabulary has its limitations. I really struggle to unpick some of the announcements, like things like, I read things like, can I have a kids party? And unpicking what it means is actually very hard. It's not written for the audience, for a general audience. And then I read a study. I spoke to somebody who does Welsh language government stuff. And in Wales, obviously. And he was talking about the fact that because there's a big drive to encourage the use of the Welsh language, but a lot of the published Welsh language is a very literary, higher-minded version, or there is no concept of plain Welsh or plain Croatian. And so for whilst the scenario is different, the effect is the same, which is that you have to have a higher degree of literacy in order to comprehend the way it's written. That is to say, to understand, which might be a word that is more plain. But you know what I mean? So it's like, there's this big drive on plain English and content design for English language content, but for other languages, I think they're behind in that regard.
And sometimes, yeah. Anyway,
so it's something I would actually be interested in doing a bit of a study on that. So if anyone wants to fund me, let me know.
Come to our Patreon.
How are you, Michael?
How am I?
Yeah, become a patron of
and then
a Patreon.
Study language things.
And I can make because also there's a strong correlation between the increase in acceptance of fake news and like anti-vaxxing information and things like that, and the fact that people, if you go to the public health website to read about vaccines, it is incomprehensible content for somebody who is a lay person. And so by not explaining yourself properly, you are actually pushing people further away, making them feel, by obfuscating, you are making people feel stupid, like they're missing something, like they don't understand. So their reaction is, well, I'm not going to have your vaccine then. So, it's not a trivial matter now that you mention it.
It's a big problem.
So.
Anyway, how am I? I had a good night's sleep last night, but the night before last, I was just in the middle of this dream, and I was just dreaming, and I suddenly went, this is why am I wasting my time? This is just a dream. None of this is real. What am I wasting my time with this? And I just woke myself up, and it was like 5 a.m. I didn't really get back to sleep. I thought, that wasn't my best decision. Well, I could have enjoyed the lucidity of being in the dream a bit better than that. But we are resorting to dream stories because
nothing's happening in real life.
No real anecdotes are happening. But yeah, I was like a bit annoyed with myself for just going, what am I doing? Being asleep is a waste of time on like fictional events.
I'm not getting enough sleep. I've got a top tip though this week.
Yeah.
I bought magnesium oil.
Right.
Which you put on your feet before you go to sleep.
Yeah, Shaz has a magnesium spray.
And I do that, and that seems to have an effect. And it also has this added bonus, for me personally, of making my feet nice and soft.
Who doesn't like soft feet?
Well, have exactly. You read that, I struggle with the whole cracked heel thing.
Have you read that Born to Run book?
Yes.
Yeah, that was fun, wasn't it? Like feet. Don't coddle them. Get them soft, make them strong. They've got natural arches. Don't ruin them with soft arches underneath the natural strong arches. Born to run. I'm trying to take notes.
The only thing I'll say about the cracked arches thing is that not the cracked arches, the cracked heel can become awfully painful if left to run amok. Which happens to me in the summer. It really hurts.
When you run bare feet?
No, when I just live.
Okay. I had a weird heel thing yesterday. This is two old people complaining about their aches and pains podcast. My other stories, I don't know if you can probably see it on the stream, but like it's a bit laggy. There was 4 for a second and now it's 2. I should probably turn off the viewer count because it makes me anxious. It's laggy and I've done everything I can think of with this laptop, and I think I'm going to have to do that thing of I'm going to have to downgrade the OS. So, all of my discretionary budget for the month has gone into like an external 2 terabyte SSD, so that I can just minimize the trauma of wiping my computer, wiping my laptop, because it's never been the same since Big Sur, and it's a 2018 MacBook Pro, and there is no excuse, and all the stuff just seems just worse now. So I'm just going to downgrade and have a computer that doesn't bust my balls. The last thing is 10 years is tin.
Is it?
Oh, fuck. That was supposed to be 10 years is tin.
That's me jam.
It's Ivanka's jam there on display. So is jam a lockdown thing? Or has jam always been part of your life?
Lemon marmalade has been more to do with buying this house that has lemon trees than to do with lockdown. So yes, no. So I already had jam skills.
So let's go back to March 2020.
Yeah.
And just there was whispers of this virus. There was some pessimistic people talking about it, but normal people weren't talking about it so much yet. And then, what do you know? Oh, it's a pandemic. Oh, what does that mean? It's fine. And then, you got to change how you spend your time. And then it's like, what? Is this real? Is something actually having consequences in this world directly on my life? And I think we all braced ourselves for a couple of months.
Yeah.
A few weeks.
Expecting. Yeah.
And the next thing we know, we're a year in, and the end still is not really particularly in focus yet.
No.
So, at what point do we just, has it been a journey, or has it just been a static, endless loop?
I think the thing is, I think in the beginning, certainly in my part of the world that I'm in, being in Croatia. So one biggest effect on us was that whole not coming back to England, which it was not the plan to not come back to England. But here everybody was very, very afraid and very obedient in the initial sort of early March type time. And now everyone's so over it round here that it's like, it's quite a remarkable... and we've had a massive hump here. So we've had like teeny tiny bump. Then everyone was like, 20 people got it today. And then it was like, oh, well, that was nothing. And then there was a bit of a bigger bump at the end of the summer. And then a massive bump. Yeah. And then we got that under control. And now we're going back on a climb because they've just reopened all the restaurants and stuff. And people really just like, well, it's a load of nonsense, isn't it? I don't know.
To start off with, we didn't know what it was yet, really, as well. No. So I think, like, now that because you were like, it was like wash your hands, wash it. They didn't really understand how the transmission worked. People hadn't internalized how masks. Like we didn't have masks for ages, but I guess now it's sort of like a sort of familiar enemy, whether or not it kills hundreds of people a day, is just less terrifying than an unfamiliar enemy, as it was to start with.
Yeah, yeah.
So people just act, well, there's car accidents all the time. People die of COVID all the time. I don't care anymore. That's boring. Is Dr. Seuss been cancelled? Let's talk about that. Like, it's that sort of, you get used to it.
Well, I think it's exhausting. You can't maintain, physically, it's exhausting to maintain a level of fear and caution and apprehension, and you could just, you can't. It's a very hard way to live, and so
On one hand, I mean, the emotional, you couldn't keep up the emotional thing, but really, all we're being asked to do is, well, not go on holiday, not go to the pub, and if you go to the supermarket, put a mask on.
But you're being asked to not see people, not have a free and easy relationship with other humans, to instead of patting somebody on the arm, like, hi, how are you, or giving them a hug, those are the things that we're not supposed to do, and it's very unnatural.
Well, it's for some people more than others. I'm not someone that goes around patting people and hugging them, but that's fine because
true.
I've got my different attitudes, my different ways.
That's very true.
And honestly, like, lockdown hasn't materially affected my existence in any particularly strong way, because I've always done like the remote working thing. I've always done the Zoom calls and the international and all that kind of thing. And my biggest fear was that I wasn't going to be able to come to this studio anymore, because it was, it cost me money and all my good stuff's here. But when that seemed fine, it's sort of like it's just turned from, I should stop working. I should try and take now when I finally get to that point where I really should take a holiday soon, I'm like, even if I do get this sorted out, I can't. I'm not allowed. So that's the biggest downer of all this. In long term, luckily I don't know anyone that's died. I don't know any. I barely know anyone that's had it.
Well, yeah, we had Nick. We had a bit of a, I don't know, more 2 or 3 weeks ago. We had a full-on sort of scare of one of Nick's friends. She had got it for the second time, so she had it very, very early, and then she got it for the second time. The second time she was in hospital, and she sort of wrote it up as a, like, just to let you all know it's not nothing. So that freaked Nick out more than me, because I don't really know her, but it was very close, and it's somebody about our age and somebody who is from Brighton and who lives a lot. You know what I mean? Like, it is people like us who got it, because that's the other thing. A lot of these things that happen to other people, not to people like you, not like people like me. And so I think there's that distancing. I think we've been really, both of us, we can't undervalue or underestimate how lucky we've been in terms of still being able to earn a living, still being able to work, knowing how to use a computer. It's not alien to us, especially after we've been working remotely or working with people remotely for such a long time. It's more been like tiring waiting for other people to get used to it.
Around it, yeah.
It's like, but we can still have a laugh. Just because it's a Zoom meeting doesn't mean we have to be all serious all the time. We can make jokes about roofs.
Please, can we make silly jokes sometimes? I heard the Guilty Feminist Science Museum podcast episode earlier this week, and they had 4 people on a Zoom call, and it was a disaster. Well, it was fine, but it was also a nightmare. It was really screwed up everyone's timing, and someone would try and jump in. They had Joe Brand on, so I was like, I'm here for this. But I was going to say something about something.
I think what's the other? I think the thing that's a bit more concerning, perhaps, in the what is where we've descended to. Now we're doing all political argument. At the beginning there was quite enough of a noise. There was like Trump was an exception in going like, we're going to get our own vaccine and we're going to do this our way. But generally the world was collaborating. Scientists were collaborating. Now we've descended into some sort of bun fight over whose vaccine's better and who's got more and who's giving them to who. And, the EU, everyone's behaving badly. We've got vaccine nationalism, which is a phrase that did not exist a year ago and had never been. There's all this. There's also some of this like just bad behaviour. I think that I'm not really keen on. To be honest,
it's weird. It's like this whole thing of is it the fact that the UK is sort of so ahead of the curve in terms of vaccinations. It worries me that in a way it's sort of like Dominic Cummings was sort of saying that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
We'd have this more, and I don't really want him to be vindicated. And sort of whilst on the one hand I saw like, oh, over 40s are next. I'm over 40. I might get a vaccine soon. But then I saw that it's delayed and blah blah blah, and the EU is like doing things, and I'm like, it's almost better if we don't get to keep.
Well, I think let's remember as well that in the UK we are blessed with a National Health Service whose job is only to serve our health. And it's them. Yeah. The vaccination programs are not being organised on a national level. They are organised at a trust level, at a local level. Right. And it's like, let's not... of course, there is buying politics involved with acquiring vaccines, but the actual distribution of them, I was in meetings with local council and local trust people in November last year going, right, we're going to have to start doing this, what we're doing. Like you know what I mean? There was a lot of people cracked on. And I don't think it's a thing that can, though, thank God they didn't mess it up. But, even what's that phrase? Even a stopped clock is right twice a day.
It's obviously very not right about lots of things.
Yeah.
Let's do a little... So, it should never have become a political issue, the wearing of masks, the thinking about other people. It did, because that's the world, that's the toxic world we live in. I saw a sign on we walked over this, we saw this sign sort of stuck to a telephone pole, I don't know what it, like a light pole on a bridge yesterday, and it said, COVID, people being brainwashed into taking a vaccine for a disease that you have to take a test to even know you have. And like all this anti-vax, but like at least it had been like torn off and scratched off where it said the stuff. So, but I'm sad that someone has felt this strongly enough to go and print stickers of it and stick them. It's not just like Facebook-based misinformation that you're dealing with. It's sort of bleeding into the real world as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was talking to an auntie type person the other day, and we were talking about something. She goes, "Oh, so and so's gone a bit mad, and she's gone all anti-vaxxy," speaking about a woman in her 70s. Sort of, that's the kind of age group we're talking about. And I was like, look, it doesn't cross my mind to question it, which is a bit of a weird thing as well. It's like, oh, sorry, I'll explain myself. I'm not questioning the vaccine in any way, but that part of that is because I don't know anything about vaccines. I am not an expert in these things, and if the experts have all concluded that this is the thing, then yeah, I'm cool with it. But that isn't to say that when you go to a doctor or somebody that, or that that isn't to say that you shouldn't question authority. I fully believe that you should question authority, and you should be allowed to, and in fact you should be encouraged to, and you shouldn't have that beaten out of you. But I suppose with that comes a sort of a risk of people questioning it without the, I don't know, can you say without the right questions?
Well,
without the...
you can. And the way I'd put that is, like, if you're going to, like, you don't get to, like, ad hoc decide what you're going to trust and what you're not going to well, in terms of a vaccine, you can't go, well, this vaccine has... You've got to... What you're doing by questioning the vaccine, you've got to question the institutions that, like, do those trials. And so if you're worried about the vaccine not being tested enough, you don't go, oh, well, I'm just going to not take it. You have to, that has to be taken to the institutions. And, like, if they fail, if the scientific method used to validate those vaccines is at fault, then you've got to fix the institution. You've got to fix those trial processes. You don't just get to go, oh, well, I'm just going to cherry pick you don't just get to make up your own opinion and think that is on a par with the legacy that those institutions represent, that the sort of, like, the practices and the science and all of the stuff that goes into trying to make sure that we don't poison the population and learning from mistakes in the past, like the thalidomide mistakes, and, like, the way those have got folded into these institutions and practices. And if you really, you have to, that's what you have to address. You can't just go, oh, well, this trial's not been out for very long, so I'm just going to give it a bit. That's you don't realise how ignorant you're being when you say that kind of thing, how ignorant people are being.
Well, I think it's a very, but it's sort of, I think the whole, I think this is going back to my earlier point about institutions not communicating properly. You don't get to not explain yourself. Otherwise you're an authoritarian society. Yeah. You are not my mum or dad who, to some extent, at some part of my life, have the right to say, no argument, go and clean your bedroom or whatever your chore might be. Yeah. But, you do, and you as the person with the knowledge do have a duty to explain yourself to your audience. And that does not mean publish a PDF on your website, because downloaded does not mean read or understood. You know what I mean? It's like I think there is certainly that is one element of it. And then, but at the other, the fault of the acquirer, unless you're going to engage properly and actually seek to understand and to question, like you say, okay, so who's telling me this? Why are they telling me this? Who are they? How dare they? Blah, blah, go deep. Then actually you're not doing it at all. And frankly, if you don't vote, you don't get to do any of it. Yeah. You could just
a little. It's astoundingly ignorant to think that your, like, opinion based on what you can see is in any way comparable to the opinion of of the sort of medical authorities that are kind of, certifying these viruses. But yeah, when we talk about you've got to communicate, basically, if the misinformation has better marketing than the information, what do you expect? And then if you complain about the government spending money on PR for the vaccine, sorry, but that's the world we're in. Like, it has to be done, because people will just see polished misinformation against incomprehensible real information.
And I think that is a job of work. It's not the end. It is critical, and because it underpins as well all that sort of, I mean, I've done other research on medical things, and, like, especially in the NHS, looking at given this whole COVID situation, there's been a lot of opportunity for the medical profession to test out remote stuff that they've never been allowed to do previously, because not allowed to, they've never got to. So it's accelerated a load of things that make use of modern technologies and stuff like that. But fundamentally, if you can't convince a patient that this is not the rubbish COVID version of your service, but rather the more efficient, faster, whatever it might be, but still medically valid version of the service, then people get freaked out if they don't trust it. But it's not up to them. I don't think it's up to the sort of, like, the person who's to be convinced to look for reasons to trust. It's up to the person who wants to be trusted to demonstrate that their trustworthiness. And so it's like, but I mean, equally though, I find, that there's people, maybe it's not unequally, it's just reminded me as well of thinking about living in a very small place.
Yeah.
And people go, well, I haven't seen you about. It's like, well, that's what happens in a little village. They're like, you live here? I haven't seen you. It's like, well, so I haven't seen you either. You know what I mean? That's sort of like, in my sphere of knowledge, I've not encountered this, therefore it's wrong.
Yeah,
it's like, well,
difference, change. Let me stick a break in. So if we weren't where we are, technologically speaking, it would have been a very different experience, wouldn't it? This whole, it's very much enabled by where we are. Like, video chatting works, like, stuff can be done remotely, like loads of this stuff that, and it's great that it's, there's all this stuff that we hope that we'll take out of it. Also, people just finally being forced to get round to figuring out those technological things, but also like seeing that you don't have to commute at rush hour every day. You don't have to go through Victoria Station every day to be like all these like you like working from home was some sort of privilege afforded to people that was shown to like most people are just fine working from home, and productivity's gone up and this and that and the other, like all these quality of life things that have been that the employers' hands have been forced, and then obviously with all the flights and the travel and all that stuff that has had to be cut right back, and we're mostly just fine. All those business trips, I've got to fly over there for one meeting and then fly back. You just hope that we'll carry as much of that forward as possible.
Yeah. And we that's the thing I'm beginning to fit. And I was a bit like, this was, stop and make us think and understand that we do have to, like, we're not all protected from the disease until we're all protected from the disease. Mm. Like it's very much, it can be used as a thing to bring us together, or it can be used as a thing to like make us more insular and narrow-minded and more locked into our own communities, and sort of like, that sort of vaccine nationalism behaviour, and we're not going to your country because you've got more people with the virus than we have, or we're better than, it's sort of brought out some of the ugliness. But some of the progress in remote medicine that's for example, that's been, never mind our, being able to work with somebody in America or FaceTime with granny. Some of the progress that has been possible because of the forcing function will make healthcare provision better for people in remote areas away from the virus. Yeah.
So can you, like, I have not really come across this remote medicine term so much, but what I do know is like this thing where it was like register for a digital GP and be able to, I don't know, like do that. The fact that that replaced your physical GP in their minds, that made me just not want to do it, because I'm like, well, okay, 99% of the time I don't want to just go, okay, I can only have digital treatment. So, but yeah, I don't know about the digital only treatment, but for example, when you're doing, if you rock up to A&E, I don't know, particularly A&E, it is much more efficient and quicker to get you where you need to go if you have a quick video call with a ophthalmologist registrar before you turn up, who can go, that's okay, I'm going to send you. And it's all a question of whether you've got enough data. They're not a replacement necessarily, but it increases the number of decisions per hour that can be made. It's like, get somebody really expert and then get a video, because our phones actually have, there are more studies now where there are certain medical conditions that you as the person with it are actually
a very big expert in whether or you're going to have a episode or whatever it might be. And as long as if you report that in and go, this has happened. Oh, and here's my blood pressure that I've measured at home, and here's my something else I've measured at home. So it's not for everybody. It's not like a universal. Nobody gets to see a doctor. But it's just applying appropriate things and accelerating. And it's not just patients. It's also doctors who need to feel more satisfied that this is still a good service. Yeah,
so it augments. It can even so the fact that can augment like A&E even is really interesting. But obviously this story I had was pre-COVID as well, and it seemed like a sort of one of those crude government ways of trying to institute something. There is definitely
some sort of like crude money saving drivers. But
I guess how much of medicine is poking someone and going, does this hurt? And how much of it is you take a blood pressure medicine, you ask them the right questions, and then they give you the answers, and then you're like, okay, it's probably this. Probably like 99% of it, you don't need to be in person at all. And then if you can take out that overhead of waiting, I don't know, whatever,
Yeah. And it's like for some people having to go to an appointment. It's like this woman that I had a run-in yesterday. I phoned up to register with a like a public health dentist, and she went. She basically claimed that I couldn't. She was properly not a pleasant person, but anyway, she said, "Well, you can stroll over, and it'll be much easier to explain it all in person," she said. That makes many assumptions about my availability, my ability to get there. Do you know what I mean? So, but if I can have some sort of, I've taken my blood pressure, I've done this, I've done that, and now I don't have to travel to the hospital. I don't have to pay for parking. I don't have to find someone to look after my kid. I don't have to do all these other things. So like I said, it's not everything for everybody, but it increases the sort of access and releases time for people who do really need to be seen in person and who really do want to be seen in person, I think. So, and
I guess that you'd sort of like historically you'd expect a certain amount of condescension from a doctor if you said, I've taken my blood pressure and I've weighed myself. They'd be like, yeah, sure you have. Yeah, well, it's just like it takes that like a little bit of an attitude change. But and again, that's something that you sort of have to be forced by a disaster. I'd like our disaster capitalism episode. It wasn't something I'd thought about at all, but it's so relevant to so much at the moment. Like you've got to wait for something terrible to happen, and then things start to. Lots of things change for the worse, but loads of things start to get like looked at properly. Because if you've got to change anyway, then you might as well like fix some of the stuff that's broken, like me reinstalling my computer. Let me put one last thing. So that is my world at the moment. So I pay for 2 of the spaces, but because there's a third guy and we're trying to rent out the 4th place, but as the lockdown has happened, I've just kind of like expanded to fill the entire space. So it's all right for some, innit?
All right, yeah.
There's this psychological thing where the less eventful your time is, the longer it seems to take. But in hindsight, the less time it seems to have taken, because we build memories based on all the different events. So we just don't really. It seems short. So in a way, this year feels it's gone in a flash. But it has felt like a real frickin' grind at the same time.
I don't know. I feel like it's been very long.
Well, maybe it needs a little bit more of a delay before it starts to feel like I've forgot. I think maybe it needs to change again before we can get rid of it. Like once we're back to normal, there are things I hope we will remember about it, but there are things I will be glad to forget.
Yeah, I think I'm very, very glad that we can do FaceTime with Granny. That's my main, that's made a big, for a small child to not see their grandparent for a very long time is a big deal, But I think that there are. It's just I do feel a bit like this week. I feel a bit like I'm having a week where it sort of felt like a bit of a slog.
Yeah.
And I need a bit. I was like, "Can I have a week off, please? Yeah. Can we have a week off the pandemic, please?"
Yeah.
And it's hard to maintain it, and it's hard to be the sensible adult. Like we didn't have a birthday party for our child, and the same week somebody else invited her to a birthday party for their child, and we didn't let her go. And it's like, and for a little kid, their birthday party is a really important ritual.
And when you think how long time feels when you're a child, it's like 20% of your life. It's like, oh God.
And she's like, why can't I go? Because I see these children at nursery anyway. And I was like, well, if we go, then we all go, and all their parents will be there. We'll all be there in the same space. And but we basically had to say, look, we don't know, and it doesn't feel logical, but we're just trying to make the best decisions that we can. So, and then, but you're trying, it's all very well to say you can be open and honest with your small child, but it's like, I want a party.
Yeah. I think we've all had enough of it. Like, so I feel like just I work and work, and nothing's any different by the end of the week. And and then I'm sort of like, especially with like having to buy a freaking piece of kit that I wasn't planning on buying just to be able to get back to the baseline level. Just like yesterday, I was just like, I've had enough. I just don't want to do this. Why am I doing any of this kind of feeling? So definitely a bit of and I can feel it, like when there's that little sinking, the sink of depression that kind of goes, ooh, and you're like, God. And I'm glad I can like spot it straight away and don't just end up with that being my feeling the entire time. But definitely at the moment, like it's happening. Like,
yeah. I think
at least the sun's coming out again. Like I think the winter made it. At least it was sunny during that initial lockdown, and you were like,
It's true. We went into summer. Yeah. Oh, I agree.
It's hard to be. I've actually got data. I think I'm happier when the sun's out. I've proven it.
You've proven it to yourself. I think if there's one thing extra that I would like to say on the subject of this whole pandemic and being locked down is the thing that I've still really struggled with is people who behave badly towards each other, like in a work environment or something. Just think life is really, by most measures, really quite shit for many of us. Even if it's not every day and all the time, but it's hard in ways it's never been before. It's in a whole new ways. Yeah. And pretty much in every given day, you cannot be sure that everyone around you isn't having a very low day.
Yeah.
Why, in those circumstances, do you think it's okay to be rude, to be aggressive, to be offensive? That is the bit that I can't accept. I'm finding it extra difficult. So I am being more. I think in the work environment, I'm a bit more calling people out.
Yeah.
Just be kind. That's my little like. That's the bit I'm finding most difficult. It's like everyone's having a shit time. Be nice.
So infuriating that people can't just think that their pain is more important than yours and that they're just going to take it out on you.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily I haven't had to deal with any of that myself.
No, I've had some corkers. I have.
Oh.
But yes, it's Friday, which is nice, and we're gonna have a party in the garden.
Excellent.
Me and Nick. So yeah, we're gonna have
well, that sounds good.
Light a fire.
We've booked 2 days off. I finally got Sharon to commit to 2 days, and I was like, look, I don't know what we're going to do. We'll buy some gardens. We'll do our front garden. We'll get some mini fences and like organise the front garden or something. But we've just got to we can't travel, but like we've got to do something. Yeah, so we're just going to try and do that to take, and hopefully, like. Each Friday comes around, I'm like, oh my God, it's Friday again. I feel like nothing's happened. I feel like I've worked really hard and nothing's changed. And it's the end of the week again. And you just hope that, how many more of these are we going to have to do? Hopefully not too many before we can, go to Milan. Which will be very nice.
Delightful.
Anyway, let's I'm going to press the button for outro. All right, thank you for listening. And if you like the podcast, you can go to grandpodcast.com and find out more. You can support us on Patreon if you want to join our Slack, if you want to get access to the video episodes. And this is live on Twitch at either Grand Podcast or that just hosts at Michael Forrest on Twitch. Where can people find you on the internet, Ivanka?
People can find me at Ivanka on Twitter.
Well, there we go. I liked that at Bad Eel liked your tweet about the book on Twitter.
I did look. I think he.
He probably thought you were an influencer.
Oh. Yes, but it was good. It was definitely a good read. I'm glad I downloaded it and it was easy to read. Well, easy in terms of physical effort, but mental effort was a bit like, oh gosh.
Yes, but very interesting book. I'll link to it again. We've got one comment in the chat for the whole episode today from Lizard Pix saying, I just listened to a basically virtual bar fight. And I don't know how that relates to anything we said or is in lieu of what, so I just ignored it. So thanks for that, Lizard Pix. And I think that's it.
Fight?
Yeah, I don't know what he's on about. He or she is on about. Or they. Let's call it a day. Do you want to? And yeah, okay, right. Thanks for listening. Thanks very much. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Just got to do the. Where do you see the chat?